Hello, hello. Good morning, afternoon, evening to all of you women. This is a new camera that I have. So the bad thing about it is an oblong shape that does not hook to the top of my computer. So I am currently looking at the edge of my computer, and everything that I need to look at is over here. So that's the downside. The good side is I got this for free, and the quality, right? Like the quality is fantastic. So let me know what you think, if it's worthwhile to have this better quality camera, but have me have to look over here and back and forth, or if I should just revert back to the camera that I've used before, and then hope and pray that eventually I can afford to get a nice camera to clip onto the top there. Today, I'm going to talk about testosterone. We've talked about this before. Yes, free stuff is always great. And I have just been getting away with thievery lately. All these people in my neighborhood are giving out things for free. And so I've been taking advantage of that. And I also have been like filtering out my own things as well. So it's been nice to do these kind of trades and such. So hello, Useless Strawberry. Hello, ONC. I did want to mention something. This is going to be kind of like a casual-ish stream, a little bit less professional than last time. I've got a kind of a migraine going on, so I'm a little bit out of it. So, but I did want to show one of the best gifts I've gotten. So this is a copy of the screenplay for The Witch. It's a film I really, really love. I highly recommend this film. Written and directed by a man, but it is about a young girl, and she is, going through the time where the witch trials were happening and everything, and she's living in an isolated area on a farm. And then witchy things happen. But it's done in a way that's very tame, and it gives a really great perspective into sort of the expectations of like a 14, 15, 16-year-old girl back in those days, and what life was like, and how the sort of like horror parallels are, you have paranormal things happening, but then you also have like just struggling to survive, just like wondering if you're going to die this winter, and real practical horrors. So seeing those two kind of collide on screen was a real gift. And so I got this as a present from my wonderful girlfriend, and I've been going through it just a little bit because I just got it, and it's such a great read. And A24 is a great production company, and the way they packaged this script, let me tell you, it was gorgeous. Like they gave, yeah, it is such a cool gift. But they gave so much attention to detail in like how they put the book together, and then how it was packaged and everything. And there's like these little notes of like dear reader and stuff around it, and it's great. So yeah, I just wanted to brag about that for a second because I'm like just giddy. I can't wait to finish reading it. So let's dive into some other real life horrors. Talking about testosterone. Let's take a look here. All right. So the last video that I did, I talked a bit more about what is testosterone, what are the chemical components, how is it then used primarily in depot testosterone form, how that is blended with benzoate, maybe that's incorrect, but that, and cottonseed oil, and how that is an injectable drug. I went into a little bit about how it's classified, and how it's regulated by the FDA for here in the US. Um, but one thing I wanted to go over was sort of the history of it. And so I wanted to touch on the creator, because originally when I thought of doing this stream, I wasn't really sure where to go with it. To be quite frank, I've been in a really great mood, and talking about this kind of thing tends to kind of put me in a little bit of a bad mood. So it helps actually if I'm like already in a bad mood to start talking about this stuff, because it gets me a little fired up. I have some personal interests vested in this. Um, so I wasn't sure where to go with this, but then I started kind of falling down this rabbit hole of why was this synthesized? Why was testosterone synthesized? And of course, like a no-brainer, its origins were to help men. But one thing, and this is so interesting to me, one thing I've been really struggling to find is how and why it started being used in women in order to assist them with medical transition. So I couldn't really find anything. I mean, I found a lot of stories from people who had medically transitioned, like in the 80s and 90s. And I think I found one story from the late 70s, about a medical transition for a female. But yeah, I couldn't find details of like who the doctors were who first started doing this. For something that's been so big, you'd think it would be talked about more. So if you have any resources talking about, the first women to be given testosterone in order to transition, especially like here in the US or in Canada, I'd be very, very interested to know that. So please feel free to drop links or send me a message, because I really had a hard time finding anything about that. I did find one story that was about a person, a woman who transitioned, and I might go into that. I tend to try to avoid personal stories like that because I don't want to give fodder. I don't want anyone to hear the story of someone like that because she's long past. I don't want anyone to hear that story and mock her choices, or offer fake sympathy, because neither of those things does her any good. Neither of those things does any good for her, what she's left here, So I'm a little bit conflicted about sharing her story, but we'll see. To start off with, we are going to talk about isolation and synthesis of testosterone. Now, see, my eye line is over here because the camera's over here, because it doesn't make sense. I don't know why it's the shape that it is. It's so stupid. Anyway, so this is from Bioscientifica, sorry. And this is like a clinical endocrinology society. And there's more to this story. I'm obviously just reading a piece of it. So in the previous paragraphs, it discusses the kind of the market blowing up for men who want heightened virility, more energy, men who are suffering maybe some sort of testicular failure. They even go into detail talking about testicular transplants, which I will not be reading here because but also it's really interesting to know, like, they would literally take goat testes and put them, like, give them to these men. And, God bless them. I'm sure there are some men out there who really were struggling, but it harkens to me back to the comments we've heard from trans-identified males who say, like, well, if you're not using your uterus, you should be giving it to trans women. And it's like, what are they going to these goats and saying, well, you're not using your testicles, so give it to, why do we think that bodies are Lego pieces. Like that's not, they are, and this is animals, and some people have differing views about animal testing in regards to that. I have some very strong opinions about animal testing, which I will not go into here. But regardless, like still, you're like decreasing the quality of life of another creature in order to assist this person's life. Now, does their life depend on testosterone in the body or not? And for some males, it does to a certain degree. I was reading today a story from a man who recently got off of Lupron that he had been taking for cancer. And he wrote about how it destroys your pituitary gland. And your pituitary gland decides, essentially, it like sends the trigger of how much testosterone a male is supposed to be producing in their bodies. So it's safe to say if if a male is low on testosterone, there could be something very serious going on there, and that needs treatment. Now, whether that treatment is putting goat testicles in them or injecting them with testosterone, I'm not really so sure. I do think it could benefit some men, but I also don't know if the process of its use is really to benefit them in their physical health as much as their like social and sexual health, if that makes any sense. I don't know if the purpose for giving a man testosterone is primarily, we need to get your body into a healthy way, versus, well, we need you to be able to perform sexually. That's what you would like. And, you want to have more energy and maintain your hair. And I'm not trying to dismiss those things, because I have my own shallow feelings of, I would love to have, enough of X, Y, or Z to make my body feel a little bit better and to make me feel like I'm something or other, right? But in any case, I think I've driven the point down into the ground now. Oh yeah, not going into testicular transplants. Nope. So isolation and synthesis of testosterone. Starting off great. The craze for such products cause concern about the image of the young field of endocrinology. So back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, endocrinology was seen as kind of a mad scientist field. It was highly frowned upon, essentially, to be delving into this because it was seen as so experimental. And of course it was very new. So they had to experiment to learn more. So it kind of had this reputation, as it says here. The famous neurosurgeon Harvey W. Cushing from 1869 to 1939 went so far as to talk about endocrinology in the context of this organotherapy. Finally, reacting to the hype generated by testicular transplantation and organotherapy, the pharmaceutical industry and academic research cooperated in order to rehabilitate endocrinology and replace organotherapy by proper hormone substitution. So that is essentially them saying, we're not going to be, taking animals' parts and putting them into humans for this purpose. We are instead going to find a way to synthesize testosterone. As steroid biochemistry progressed, the great breakthroughs were the discovery of the ring structure of steroids and bile acids at the Natural Institute of Medical Research in London in 1932, and at the Bavarian Academy of Sciences in Munich, also in 1932. A heated discussion ensued whether there were 3 or 4 rings in the steroid structure, and if 4 rings, whether the 4 had 5 or 6 C atoms. Under the sponsorship of the Health Organization of the League of Nations, the predecessor of WHO, World Health Organization, highly recognized chemists, including Edmund A. Doisy, Adolf Butenandt, and Guy Merian, assembled at University College London and reached a consensus that steroids had 4 rings, and the 4th ring had 5 C atoms. Shortly before, these eminent researchers, including Ernst Laqueur, had isolated pregnenolone and estrone from pregnant mare urine. So essentially, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting here, but for the longest time, I think they've changed the chemistry, but it's kind of a joke now amongst women, especially who take estrogen, that they take the estrus from mare urine. So pregnant horses, they take the urine and then they would synthesize that, basically, not synthesize, but they would process that into an estrogen replacement therapy for women. So it's kind of a joke amongst us where it's like, hey, did you take your horse pee pill? Gotta take your horse pee. Laqueur had isolated pregnenolone and estrone from pregnant mare urine provided by various drug companies cooperating with scientists. In 1934, Butenandt, as well as 3 further teams, added progesterone to the array of sex steroids. Their purpose was to replace the miscredited organotherapy and to make proper steroid substitution available to patients. So this is a nice little timeline to show you kind of what happened until they were right at the edge of synthesizing testosterone. And then it goes on to talk about more transplantation things. In the dawn of testosterone emerging as a biochemical and marketable entity, and after lengthy negotiation in 1935, Ciba, Switzerland, and Schering Kalbum, Germany, pharmaceutical companies active in the field started a cooperative effort to inform each other about progress and thus forced their academic protagonist, Leopold Ruzicka, 1887 to 1976, at the Technical University of Zurich, and Adolf Butenandt, 1903 to 1995, at the then Technical University of Gdansk. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing that, I know, to exchange their respective advances, to which the former rivals reluctantly agreed. In 1937, the Ciba-Schering cooperation was extended to include Boehringer, Germany, Chimio Rosel, France, and Organon, the Netherlands, to form a real cartel syndicate to share knowledge, to stake market claims worldwide, and to agree on pricing of the products. So essentially, they all joined forces to kind of determine what it is, how to tell people what it is, and how to sell it to them. While economically profitable, this syndicate is also an early example of successful academic-industrial cooperation. So this kind of cooperation, pros and cons. Pro, it helps everybody be on the same page. It helps everybody understand what this drug is, what we are going to prescribe it for, how much we're going to sell it to people, et cetera, et cetera. Cons, creates a monopoly, creates a monopoly of misinformation, because if pharmaceutical companies are all on the same page, they're also going to be repeating to each other, hey, this is how we market this drug, and these are the things we don't tell patients about. So you can see how that might evolve later on into some bad dealings, but that's, just my conspiracy theory. Wow, I have not been paying attention to chat, and I come back and y'all are talking about Hitler already? Dang. That was fast. While economically profitable, this syndicate is also an early example. Oh, I apologize. I already read that part. In 1931, Adolf Butenandt, then at the University of Göttingen, isolated the androgenic steroid androsterone from 15,000 liters of urine provided by young policemen from Berlin, and which were processed by sharing to obtain 15 milligrams of this substance. That sounds like a time and a half. Just a good old party. Butenandt considered androsterone, I'm sorry, I'm kind of slurring that word, androsterone, the principal androgen. Ernst Laqueur and his group at the University of Amsterdam and at Oregon were specialized in extracting hormones from animal glands. From 100 kilograms of bull testes, they extracted and isolated 10 milligrams of another androgen, 17-hydroxy-4-androst-3-one, which they found to be more active than androsterone in biological tests in 1935. They baptized this hormone testosterone. Although Butenandt liked neither this dreadful name nor the competition, in the same year, Butenandt and Hanisch, at the time at the University of Gdansk, as well as Ruzicka and Wettstein in Zurich, Basel, published the chemical synthesis of testosterone, thus marking the beginning of modern clinical pharmacology of testosterone and male reproductive physiology. So, it goes without saying that obviously, like, female reproductive physiology was not but a shadow of a thought in doctors' minds. But it is interesting to note that even male physiology was a fairly recent endeavor. You'd think they would have been all up in that, but I don't know. Maybe they were too busy with religion or something. For the synthesis of testosterone, Butenandt had started from dehydroandrosterone, while Ruzicka used a degradative approach, which he also used for 17-alpha methyltestosterone, the first orally effective testosterone preparation. As far as I'm aware, no females take testosterone orally. As I mentioned in the last testosterone video, the main methods are injection, which is how depot testosterone is introduced into the system. There are also dermal patches, kind of like the nicotine patch, but you tend to place it on your pelvic region because then, hopefully the thought is that it absorbs into your skin and then into your system, and it will hit your reproductive system quicker that way if it's located near it. That to me sounds like a bad time, but that's also where where the gel is usually recommended to be put. I recall when I went on the gel, and they were very adamant, don't have sex with anyone right after you put the gel on, because they could get some of the gel on them and they would have testosterone in their system. It's like, well, but I thought it's fine. And they're like, well, not if she's pregnant or whatever. And they told me this. They don't talk about that anymore, really. But I don't think any women have taken the oral kind in order to transition. Oh, dear God, I have a lot to catch up on here. Okay. Okay, so this is where the chat is going, I see. That's really fascinating. And as a woman of Jewish ancestry, makes me just so full of glee that he could not perform. I am sad, however, that bulls were their testes were sacrificed for the sake of such a foul creature to be able to get it up. However, let's get back. So they go into the chemical synthesis here. I don't have this image. Oh, here we go. I don't have this image downloaded. So this is the chemical component, dehydroandrosterone. So this is what they kind of reduced it down from the either the bull's testes or from the men's urine that they had collected. And then these are the two that they came out with. So there's androsterone and androstenediol. Androsterone was the one that came from the human men who their urine. This is the one that came from their urine. This is the one that came from the bull's testes, I believe. And then they kind of further restructured it, and then bam, testosterone. So that's kind of where it came from, is dehydroandrosterone. And I apologize. I never took chemistry. I'm not even gonna lie. I never took chemistry. I was not really a star pupil when it came to science. So I can't tell you very much about the chemistry here. But it might be useful to know. So let's see here. So this talks about hypogonadism, and let's see, where am I trying to get in? Yeah, here we go. The fertile eunuch syndrome, lack of testosterone, but with active spermatogenesis. So essentially, they found that there was a sort of unhealthy feminization going on, and that was determined to be a result of hypogonadism. So that's part of why they utilized synthesized testosterone, was to, and I don't know if this has been, if this is a DSD or, and I'm sorry if I'm using an outdated term. I'm not up to date with the proper terminology to use for that condition, for those conditions. But I don't know if this is considered one of those, or if this is not, but I do know that this is something that can still affect people today. Early warning for testosterone. Around the same time, Huggins also posted his warning about testosterone influencing prostate carcinoma, which prevailed until quite recently and led to castration as the major treatment of prostate carcinoma, when androgen deprivation therapy, ADT, by GnRH analogs, Lupron, or anti-androgens was introduced instead. So instead of physically castrating you, they will poison your body, whole body. And I mean, I don't fault any man who's in a position where those are his two choices. I don't fault him for making either of those choices, or, I don't envy that position whatsoever, because that has got to be very difficult. As I stated, I read a recent story from a man who just got off Lupron, and in the circles that I'm involved in Lupron survivors groups, and most of it is women. Most of it is women. There are also occasionally trans-identifying males and females who were given this drug to transition, to block puberty, so it said. But then there's also men in the group who talk about their stories, and this drug was originally invented for them, and Lupron, that is, GnRH androgens, analogs, were invented for men primarily. And the things that they talk about going through on these drugs, it's like, damn, like, I don't know, man. Like, if I had testicles, I might just opt for them to cut it off instead of going on that drug. But of course, I can't really, I'm not ever going to be in that position, so I can't really say. Huggins' statement, quote, cancer of the prostate is activated by androgen injections, and, quote, induced a general fear of testosterone, especially among urologists, which prevented testosterone treatment in many patients who might have needed it. Only recently, it became clear that neither endogenous serum testosterone levels nor testosterone treatment have an impact on prostate carcinogenesis. Nowadays, under careful supervision, testosterone treatment is even considered for patients suffering from testosterone deficiency after radical prostatectomy and castration. So, this saying it's only recently become okay is really interesting. That synthesized testosterone had a very negative reputation in the medical community up until around like the 90s. Like, it started to be developed and talked about a lot more way before then, but it was generally thought of as a like last resort, this is going to harm you more than help you kind of drug. All right, so excuse me. When injected, testosterone has an extremely short half-life of only 10 minutes, and as such is not suited for substitution purposes. Therefore, the third possibility of making testosterone clinically effective is esterification at the 17-hydroxy group of the molecule, making it suitable for intramuscular injection. Testosterone propionate was the first of these esters, marketed by Ciba and by Schering in 1936. However, this ester has a short half-life, so that effective serum levels are reached for only 1 to 2 days. So just for comparison, testosterone cypionate, which is depot testosterone, what most females take to transition medically, that usually has a half-life of, it depends on your dosage, right? Like, because your dosage could be completely different. But for a standard dose, you would probably have a half-life of about like 7 to 10 days. So that's like a great increase compared to how it was before. Following the propionate ester, testosterone enanthate, I can't speak today, I apologize. Testosterone enanthate was synthesized by Chunkman at Schering and marketed as intramuscular testoviron depot injection in 250 milligram doses, providing substitution for 2 to 3 weeks. 250 milligrams. That's a significant amount. I was on a little bit less than that. And I was taking that at one point every week. So, and I'm small. I'm a fairly petite woman taking the, however, the pharmacokinetics are characterized by transient serophysiological peaks for a few days, followed by a slow decline to levels below the lower limit of normal. Although patients do not appreciate these uneven swings in mood, activity, and libido between injections, this remained the major testosterone preparation for substitution of hypogonadism for half a century, and is still used today as a cost-effective alternative to more modern preparations. Testosterone depot is still readily available. I don't believe I was ever on it. I don't know if I ever knew anyone who was on it, but it is still readily available. I believe for the sake of seeing quick results and not having to deal with mood swings and such as much, that those who are prescribing testosterone for transition purposes prescribe the other versions. But I don't know if that's really why. So then it talks about testosterone suppositories, which for a man makes sense. You want to get that to those organs quickly. Very grateful that was not something that was looked at as a resource for me. There's also a nasal route, so like a nasal spray. They were just trying to come up with all the best ways to get testosterone in the body. In the 1950s to 1970s, the pharmaceutical industry tried to modify the chemical structure of the molecule in order to disentangle the various effects and produce predominantly erythropoietic, osteogenic, or anabolic steroids. Although more than 1,000 of these androgens were synthesized, it proved impossible to produce androgens with only one desired effect out of the whole wide spectrum of testosterone activities. Nevertheless, while some anabolic androgenic steroids were clinically used, they disappeared again in the wake of evidence-based medicine. However, they retained a shadow existence for doping in sports and bodybuilding, potentially causing considerable undesired effects. Let's go here, 64. Shoot. Adverse effects on non-reproductive organs and functions. So I'm going to do this. And go here. There we go. In the 1970s, the WHO Human Reproduction Program, as well as the Population Council of the Rockefeller Foundation, had identified male contraception as an unmet need for family planning and as a means against global overpopulation. Hormonal male contraception based on the combination of testosterone and a progestin was at that time, and remains so to the date, the most likely candidate for general use. However, the existing testosterone preparations required too frequent applications. To overcome this deficiency, both organizations started programs in search of long-acting testosterone preparations. Under the auspices of WHO, testosterone butylicate was synthesized and identified as a long-acting preparation well-suited for male contraception, and by the same token, also for substitution. However, no pharmaceutical company could be persuaded to develop this promising preparation further, so that in its ensuing clinical trials for male contraception, WHO switched to intramuscular testosterone undecanoate as described below, and is now widely used for the treatment of hypogonadism. Meanwhile, the Population Council had turned to 7-A-methyl-19 nortestosterone, MENT, as its preferred androgen for male contraception. This androgen might have the advantage of lacking conversion to DHT, and thereby have little effect on the prostate. As MENT has a rather short half-life, it was administered via subdermal celastic implants. delivering the active substance for a year or perhaps even longer, thus being well suited for contraception as well as for substitution. However, the company invested in further clinical research with this androgen, dropped its plans in the wake of being taken over by another company not interested in the male. Interesting. I wish they had a reference to what company took them over. Maybe we can find out together. In the mid-1990s, transdermal testosterone films applied to the scrotal skin became the first transdermal testosterone preparation in clinical use. Invented by Virgil Place, 1924 to 2012 at Alza in Palo Alto, California, and first tested in clinical trials in Munster, they showed excellent pharmacokinetic and clinical results, and for the first time, physiological testosterone serum levels could be achieved. Patients were very satisfied with this physiological pharmacokinetic profile as long-term substitution revealed. However, physicians were reluctant to prescribe a medication to be applied to the scrotum, preferring a subsequently developed non-scrotal testosterone system. This, however, caused unpleasant skin reactions as it required an alcoholic enhancer to drive testosterone through the skin. Fun fact, yes, I was on the gel and it just reeked of rubbing alcohol. That's what it smelled like. I got them in these like little packs, and I would squirt it and rub it all over. And if I had like a cut on my hand or something, is always like really painful because there's so much alcohol in there to make it soak through the skin. It's funny to me that doctors were like, ew, I don't want to tell patients to touch their scrotum. And instead, or like, yeah, give me the searing alcohol stain. So that definitely sounds like something the doctors came up with versus the patient. I don't think that men really would have, maybe I'm wrong, but I just can't see a man who's like needing testosterone having that much issue with touching himself down there just to put a patch on. And the patches that I've received at least were fairly small, but I wasn't on those for very long, so I'm not sure. I'm going to take just 1 second here to go use the restroom. So I apologize. I will be right back, and I will do that. There we go. He's been so wild today. I don't know what his deal is. I probably gave him too much sugar. All right. So that's pretty much the end of this this article talking about the use and development. Let's see. I was hoping they would cover the German Olympic scandal. But I guess they didn't. I have my own feelings as to why maybe that might not be included in here, but that's just a guess. So now I come over to Springer.com. Doping with anabolic androgenic steroids, adverse effects on non-reproductive organs and functions. I did not purchase this article. So, there's only this preview of it, but I wanted to, let's see, is the whole article? Yeah, I think this is only the preview. I'm not going to purchase the article. Excuse me. But, so this, I found this last night, and it was relating, anabolic steroid use, aka doping with testosterone, and that connection to toxic liver and cirrhosis and kidney failure. So it also talks about may induce exaggerated self-confidence, reckless behavior, aggressiveness, and psychotic symptoms. Withdrawal may be accompanied by depression and suicidal intentions. So one thing that I think is really interesting, one thing I think is interesting that isn't really talked about much is there is a very real addictive quality to testosterone, especially when you're on a very high dose. So when women are trying to go off of it and detransition, you go through a withdrawal period. Like there is a physical response to withdrawing from this drug. For some of us, it's not that bad. I mean, for me, my depression got really bad. But I was lucky. I was also on an antidepressant that was pretty helpful at the time. But I mean, it definitely, like, going off of it, like, is very, very challenging. So when I see some people on either side of the fence, right, say, you know, well, if you're not really trans, or, oh, if it's not working out for you, you can just stop. It's not always that easy. You know, and it's actually like pretty dramatically not healthy for us to just stop. I did that essentially, where I stepped down from injectables to a much lower dose gel for like a week. And then I just stopped cold turkey. And I basically, like, because of the difference between the injectable and the gel, because it's such a stark difference, I might as well have just cut off cold turkey. What really should have happened was my doctor should have stepped me down on my injectable dose, you know, cut that dose in half for injectable, and then like do that amount less frequently over time, and then go down to maybe the gel form, and then cut down the gel form to less frequently than that, and then be off of it. There should have been more steps involved. And right now, there is no guide to how to medically detransition. So women are out there trying to pick up the pieces of their lives as they've gone through this major trauma, and they are going through a drug withdrawal, and they are going through severe suicidality and depression, because not only are they dealing with the fact that they were encouraged to do something harmful to themselves and they're right back where they started, but also their body is dependent on this drug now, and they've taken that drug away. And their body is reacting with, hey, like, I don't like how this feels. Let's be sad about it. So I really wish doctors gave a shit, but they don't. And of course, I'm generalizing here. So if any doctor sees this and is like, well, but, you know, some of us care. Okay, cool. But I have yet to find a doctor who has any opinion at all about my use of testosterone affecting my health or affecting my mental health. And I really wish it were talked about because it's not. I'm sorry, chat. I've been kind of ignoring you a little bit because I've been distracted with the reading and stuff. But and Luna, I don't think it happens with estrogen quite the same. I know, like, if your body, so I'll just use myself as an example because I don't know statistically if this is something that affects everyone or the majority of people, but I know for me, like because I take supplemental estrogen and it's a very low dose, like I cannot emphasize enough how low of a dose it is. But I take a very low supplemental estrogen orally because my ovaries do not function properly. And I started to develop osteoporosis. My bone density has degraded over time quicker than a woman of my age should. And so I'm on this drug, and if I have missed it for 2 days in a row before, and let me tell you, like, I had major headache, and I was in a pretty foul mood, which, I mean, could have been due to some other factors. I won't deny that. Like, I also missed some other medications, so it could be due to that as well. Excuse me, but I do think that it would affect your mood a bit. I don't think that estrogen has the addictive properties of testosterone, though. But you know, if I'm wrong, please, anyone, feel free to correct me. I have not, admittedly, done as much research on estrogen. I mean, I did some for my own personal reasons, but that was all like what's contraindicated with this drug. You know, can I take this medication with this medication and take estrogen and have everything be okay? And, you know, those kinds of things. I have not researched if estrogen has addictive properties or the effects of estrogen on the mood. But I would not be surprised if going off of it also increases depression and suicidality like testosterone. Because you're messing with hormones and you're messing with something that the body has become dependent on. So let's see here. Oh, shoot. Hang on. Share. Okay, let me do. I wish that this were a little bit easier to share with you all. Here we go. So this is, I apologize. I did not realize that this was not showing. But this is what I was referring to, the anabolic androgenic steroids. I mean, I would argue that actually it kind of affected me the opposite. Testosterone, I was manic, but also it made my depression worse, and my suicidality was astronomically worse. Now that I'm off of it and on supplemental estrogen, I have a much more calm demeanor. So I think it depends person to person. Obviously, there are different factors, but yeah, that's my personal experience, is that it was actually the opposite. Estrogen having that balance. I'm definitely more in tune with my emotions, but that's more of an in-depth experience than just I'm depressed and I want to die. And those are the feelings that I had the strongest on testosterone versus estrogen. Yeah, I do think for men who are on estrogen, I think it's a psychological thing. Um, from my discussions with men in a mental health sort of circle of discussion, talking to the ones who are on estrogen, and they've talked about how they're scared of losing their estrogen prescription. And they've built it up in their minds a lot. And I mean, I did that too, to a certain degree with the testosterone. But it's because I had plenty of experiences where I might not always have the testosterone readily available. I was dealing with, instability financially. I was unstable with my housing and my food and everything. So, having consistent access to medical care, especially to be able to afford my prescriptions, was always kind of hit and miss. And there were times where I would miss my testosterone injections and I'd feel physically very ill. Um, so like wanting to avoid that feeling was a big drive for me versus for the men, it doesn't seem to affect them as physically, not having the estrogen, but that's just observation. And too, if we're talking about men on T, then for men on T, I would imagine it makes them feel very good and gives them a lot of energy. I mean, I definitely had a lot of energy, but it went away very quickly. It was very temperamental. I agree. Like I said, I've been able to kind of access my emotions a bit more. I will say, as someone who had a primary sex hormone that's not natural to myself, it inhibited my ability to cry, but it didn't inhibit the emotion behind crying. I just felt physically unable to. But I don't really know why that was. That could have been for so many different reasons. Um, and I don't think it's as simple as saying, estrogen makes you sad or estrogen will help you cry. I don't think it's that black and white. And the small amount of estrogen I am on is, again, it's supplemental. It's something that my ovaries should be able to produce, and it's the amount that they should be able to produce right now at my age, but cannot because they've been destroyed. And that amount, it gives me emotional balance more, I would say. I don't feel like I am, any more sad or any more depressed, just like I don't feel like I'm necessarily any more happy or, ecstatic or what have you. I just feel more balanced, if that makes sense. Yeah. Um, that's a really good point, is that people who are taking these drugs to transition are very reliant on how society treats them and how their peers are validating them and encouraging them. So, and I went through that as well, where um, I I felt like this is it. This is the end goal, right? This is what I wanted, and this will fix me. So getting the testosterone, um, it was euphoric at first, but that was kind of that was more driven by my social interactions and sort of like a placebo. So like I I don't think that it affected me like in terms of my like brain chemistry, or I don't think that it like had any permanent effect on my psychology in terms of feeling less depressed. I was euphoric for the first like 3 weeks. And then after that, I just dive deep into this depression of realization of shit, what have I done? And I've talked about that before, so I'm not going to go into length about how my regrets came up pretty soon and how I dealt with those, or rather did not deal with those. But I think that's a big part of it too, is how much of it's a placebo effect, or rather a psychosocial effect, versus how much of it is a very like real physical effect. All right. Let me find the next study I wanted to find. All right. Let me see. I'm going to do this. Okay. Hopefully this will be a little bit easier for me to navigate without having to constantly go back and forth. So this is an article that was fairly recently published, about almost 2 years ago. And it talks about risk of blood clots in women who are taking testosterone. Now, for the sake of this article, it does refer to women as transgender men, but it clarifies here saying females transitioning to male, which of course is also incorrect, but that's more just nitpicking. So this was a Dutch study. Erythrocytosis is common in transgender men treated with testosterone, especially in those who smoke, have a high BMI, and who use testosterone injections. So erythrocytosis is defined as a hematocrit of greater than 0.50 LL. I'm not exactly sure what that stands for. Something liters, I think, or maybe I'm wrong. But let's see. Mine, my hematocrit recently was 0.52. It did not cause any concern with my doctor, but I don't know why, because I've had 3 mini strokes and that's been recorded. And they're kind of saying at this point, we don't know. There's no connection. We know that much, because why would there be a connection? This article says, hey, there's a connection. So the first large study of testosterone in trans men with 20-year follow-up. Now, I have not gone into here. I'm going to scroll to the bottom. Not sure. Let's see, abstract. Let's see the abstract here, if it comes up. So this was in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, volume 106, issue 6, published and made June 2021. So I'm not sure how this was funded. And that kind of makes me a little bit worried. Let me see. I will go over this article with you. But I'm trying to kind of narrow down, like, where did they get this information? The DSM 5th edition, because a lot of these resources too are basically just trans speak, so it's like they have to have a resource for why they used a certain trans word, you know what I mean? So it's kind of hard to cut away the parts where it's like that you're just meandering about with language, and instead of that, I want to find out, like, who paid for you to study the hematocrit levels, you know? So let's go back to this one because this is a little bit easier to read. Again, mine was 0.52. Mine was this level hematocrit. I no longer smoke. I do use nicotine, but you know, that's a little bit of a risk. Medical history. I did used to smoke, so that's a factor as well. I am not age 40 to 50, and I was not that age at testosterone usage. This, I think, is extremely concerning because, you know, we're seeing these old dykes, you know, old butch women, older, I should say, butch women who are getting roped into this as well, right? So we've got, you know, women who are in their 40s or older who are butches or studs or what have you, and they are being pressured to transition because women are not allowed to look that way or act that way or love that way. And the difference here is stark. It may not be that much of a jump in some results, but for this, I think that it's pretty significant. Excuse me. Also, BMI being greater or equal to 30 kilograms. And that, I mean, BMI, I think, is kind of, it's kind of a hard way to measure someone's body fat percentage, in my opinion, because height and such throws it off. I mean, I remember being like a real skinny teenager, but because I was so short, my BMI was like crazy high. And my gym teacher at the time was like, that doesn't make sense. And I was like, well, it says I'm like obese and I'm like 90 pounds soaking wet. This doesn't make sense. In any case, sorry, just catching up on chat here. Yep. Yep, I got that a lot. Also, just in general, your opinion matters more if you're a man. Even if you're faking it and everybody knows you're faking it, like if they're pretending that you're a man, that's still going to get you points. All right. Current advice for trans men based on old guidance for hypogonadism. So this references back to what we were talking about before with the origins of testosterone use and synthesis. The authors say current advice for trans men is based on recommendations for testosterone-treated hypogonadal cis men from 2008. Which advises a hematocrit greater than 0.50 has a moderate to high risk of adverse outcome. For levels greater than 0.54 LL, cessation of testosterone therapy, a dose reduction, or therapeutic phlebotomy to reduce the risk of adverse events is advised. So I'm going to interrupt myself here. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to detrans women and transitioning females who have never gotten their blood levels done. Like it's so crucial to like consistently get your labs done, and doctors are like, they don't care anymore. They don't care if we die. They don't care if we have heart attacks and strokes. I'm just saying it. Like, if you're not checked for your hematocrit, like that's what's going to happen. Like, this proves that there is a higher risk of blood clot when you take synthetic testosterone. And I just don't understand how doctors are like so because like right after this article came out, a side-by-side article said that it doesn't matter, that it's not enough of a risk. When is it enough of a risk? When? How many women have to have a heart attack or a stroke or even just have a blood clot and have a risk of it? Like, I don't know. Hi, Radical. This is a subject for further research, they observe. Yeah. Oh, this is an interesting quote here. Canceled. And that's part of my frustration with this stuff too, is again, the trans speak just kind of drowning out any of the real facts here. We're talking about women on testosterone. We don't need to keep saying trans men. We don't need to keep saying that, like, well, just because they're actually men doesn't mean we shouldn't be studying them as though they were female. No, they're fucking female. They're women. That's all it takes to be a woman. Yeah, the guidance, until more specific guidance is developed for trans men, women, if hematocrit levels rise to 0.50 to 0.54, they suggest taking reasonable steps to prevent a further increase. So again, my level is 0.52. That was as of, I want to say 2 months ago. And I've been off of synthetic testosterone, aka anabolic steroids, for almost 6 years. And I'm still at a risk. The risk is also somewhat self-induced because, again, I do consume nicotine, though I don't smoke cigarettes, and cigarettes are worse, but consuming nicotine of any kind is going to raise your risk a little bit there. But I no longer drink. I have a very healthy diet. I exercise, I do what I can, and I'm still at a risk. Let's see here. Let's go back. I'm not going to read all of this. This is exceptionally long. But I did want to mention Ernst Laqueur, who was the first pharmacology person, doctor, what have you, to begin synthesizing testosterone. And essentially, he worked in physiology and pharmacology. He was not hired. He was brought on as a volunteer doctor with the German army during the First World War. And but during the Second World War, because he was Jewish, the Nazis were like, hey, so like, we like what you're doing with this stuff, but we're going to need you to skedaddle. So he moved, I believe he moved to, Amsterdam. He moved to Amsterdam, and then he moved to, I think he moved to Switzerland, and then he moved again somewhere else. But he was, here we go. In 1941, the Nazis stripped Ernst Laqueur of his professorship and refused him access to his laboratory because he was Jewish. Given protection by unidentified people, he never had to wear the Star of David and was able to remain in Amsterdam. So, and I mean, I wonder a lot how this man would feel given what his drug synthesis is used for these days. I have lots of philosophical thoughts about that, but I'm not going to share them right now because it's not really going to change anything. Was that ever a question? Because yes. Here we go. So this is what I was kind of conflicted about sharing, but I'm deciding to share it. Lou Sullivan, she was a very early transitioned woman. She was a member and founder of the Gay People's Union in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But she, from what I understand, she, prior to transition, identified as heterosexual. And then after transition, people sort of like put on her that she was a gay man. And she sort of took that and ran with it. And unfortunately and very sadly, after that, she contracted AIDS and died of AIDS complications. But her story is heartbreaking, and I don't know, guys. I read it and I was like, dear God, this is so relatable. And this was, starting like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, almost. Like, she, so in the early 70s, she was a thin woman wearing black Levi's and a leather jacket. She says, "I'm Sheila Sullivan. I need to talk to someone, and I think you are that person." She was invited in to join the Gay People's Union in Milwaukee. And excuse me, she said that she felt like she was a man trapped in a woman's body. Now, these are just stories from people who interacted with her, who knew her. But there was one thing I wanted to look at here. She was a teenager when she said, "I wish I were a boy. They have a real feeling of being someone. They can walk down a dark street like they were its king. They don't have to report or be sheltered. They have freedom and know what life really is. I want to too. I don't want to be a girl. I hate it. I don't want it. Oh, sure, it makes me feel good when a boy looks at me and smiles or whistles. Sure. But that's just because they like the way I look, not because they like me. I want that." I'm not sure how anyone can sleep knowing what this woman went through, and that she was encouraged to believe that the only way to see a change was if she altered her body. And this woman, she had everything. She went very quickly on to testosterone, excuse me, and then proceeded to have multiple surgeries, including phallo. And just the things that she says, it resonates so much with me. I mean, I don't have the sexual feelings that she did for men, and for wanting to be able to, like she says here, to top a boy. But I definitely had those feelings of not wanting to be a girl because I saw how I was being treated. And, she is touted as the first trans man in this area. She was not a trans man. She was a woman in crisis. And it's very painful to see her story here. Let's see. I'm going to... Let's see. What am I doing? Why is it frozen there? Here is the controversial history of hormone replacement therapy. Abstract. The history of hormone replacement therapy, HRT, started in the 1960s with very high popularity in the 1990s. The first clinical trials on HRT and chronic postmenopausal conditions were started in the USA in the late 1990s. After the announcement of the first results of the Women's Health Initiative in 2002, which showed that HRT had more detrimental than beneficial effects, HRT use dropped. The negative results of the study received wide publicity, creating panic among some users and new guidance for doctors on prescribing HRT. The clear message from the media was that HRT had more risks than benefits for all women. In the following years, a reanalysis of the WHI trial was performed, and new studies showed that the use of HRT in younger women or in early postmenopausal women had a beneficial effect on the cardiovascular system, reducing coronary disease and all-causing mortality. Notwithstanding this, the public opinion on HRT has not yet changed, leading to important negative consequences for women's health and quality of life. So, which is it? Does hormone replacement therapy messing with your hormone levels, does that maybe cause things to be worse or better? But in this one, they are talking about the use of estrogen. I forget why I pulled this up. I think I was trying to find, they mentioned something about testosterone levels in here at some point. But I should probably do an overview of the synthesis of estrogen. Hang on a second. Right, I'm going to do this. Okay. Here we go. All right. So this is a pro-trans website, as far as I know. But a disclaimer. Before I get started, I should be very explicit about one issue. When I am talking about using drugs creatively, I would never recommend acting on any of these ideas without being under the supervision of a health professional who can administer, test, and interpret the results. While androgens are generally quite safe, especially if one follows a few simple rules, our physiologies are all different. What works for one person will not necessarily work for another. I strongly advise anyone who is taking hormones to seek out a qualified and sympathetic physician. Please note, the fact that someone has an MD does not automatically make them qualified to supervise you in these endeavors. As I've recommended in previous articles, if you can find a life extension physician, do so, and don't let her or him go. They are some of the most progressive and open-minded medical professionals practicing today, and they are quite often, as they should be, to patients making requests. So essentially, covering their butts here. This article, essentially this person, I don't know, male or female, is talking about their friends who is on testosterone. The trans identified female was injecting 1 milliliter every 2 weeks, but has since increased to 1.75 milliliters every 2 weeks, and is doing the injections weekly. Blood pressure has increased, but no other negative effects. No negative side effects. Pretty cool, huh? It is. Speaking broadly, androgens are drugs whose effects become more pronounced with increased dosages. To put it another way, if you take more, you will get hairier faster. And that's what you want to care about the most, right? Therapeutic dosages of testosterone, especially for hormone replacement therapy in FDM guys, it's not replacing hormones, are quite low, along the lines of what the average non-trans guy would have in his body. No, that's not correct. This sounds great, and certainly you can be comfortable with these dosages. However, there is absolutely no clinical evidence demonstrating that superphysiological dosages up to a certain level are at all harmful. If they won't hurt you and they will help you, why not consider increasing them? So, I wanted to show you this because this is how women are duped into taking this drug. This is one of the ways. This one is somewhat good because it at least talks about liver values and blood lipid values and high blood pressure, hypertension. That's good, but it also kind of candy coats it and is like, this is anecdotal and rare and such. So yeah, doctor who takes requests. But what are your options? Unfortunately, many androgens are not available in the US or Canada, but I recognize that many trans health readers do not live in the US or Canada, and therefore I'm going to list a few more choices. Testosterone, nandrolone, trenbolone, methanolone, other androgens, clomiphene, aminoglutathione, anastrozole, tamoxifen. And it goes through with these. I don't know. I don't really know where I'm going with this, but here, let me see. So it's talking about Harry Benjamin and vaginoplasty. I'm trying to find more information about. It's because it's women's health. There's not that much information on women taking testosterone. Maybe I will search more on the Johns Hopkins website or something and see, because I imagine they have a lot. But I'm not really aware of the history of this drug being used for women. Most of the information out there, as I stated before, time and time again, is that this information heavily prefers to talk about the men's health side of this. So, I think I'm going to say goodnight. There's more information that I wanted to share, but my head really does hurt pretty bad. So I'm going to rest. And maybe I'll have like a better organized part 3 on testosterone in the future. I think what I'm going to do next is possibly revisit Lupron. That just it kills my soul, but we need to talk about it. So probably going to do that. I also want to start doing kind of like a healing stream, talking about the ways that women can, especially women like myself who have been through transition, that we can heal our bodies and heal our minds and our souls. I've been working on like some body positivity stuff lately. That's been very helpful. And I think we need to talk about resources for that more. Um, it's really hard. It's really hard to like know of things that are really healing and not have access to them. So yeah, I'm thinking about maybe having a discussion about that more. Thank you for those of you who were here. I also didn't mention this at first. I am going to start adding my PayPal information. I feel kind of gross doing that, but the truth of the matter is I recently left my job, and I'm like kind of in between jobs right now. I'm hopefully going to be starting school next week. And I'm also going to be starting a job soon, but in the meantime, I'm kind of like on borrowed time in a way. I'm trying to make sure I can pay all my bills. So I am putting my PayPal info there, but it's just an aside. It's just, if you want to like help buy me a cup of coffee or something, that'd be cool. But thank you, possible person. So yeah, I hope that you all learned something from this. Again, apologies. It was kind of disjointed and casual, but anyway, yeah, I love the new camera. But we'll see. It is really annoying looking over here and then looking over here and then looking over here. And I'm like very clearly missing the chat because the chat is in the middle. And then like the articles I'm reading are to this side and then the camera's over here. So I'm like trying to go. But yeah, image looks great. I love it. And nice little cameo from Ziggy. He's been a butthole and has been pooping on me all day. So that's why he's not here. But wherever you are, I hope that you are well. I hope you're staying hydrated. I hope that you are prepared for the autumn, if that's the season that is coming up next for you. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. And take care of yourselves, women. Cherish the women in your lives and drink lots of water. Bye.